And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. I'm Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk. Spartan Stadium, Michigan State improves to 3-0 on the season, 41-24 over a pesky, well-coached Youngstown State team. Youngstown State came out here, made Michigan State work, landed some blows on Michigan State. Michigan State not nearly as crisp or clean as Michigan State wanted to be, and not as clean as I was kind of expecting them to be. I was expecting Michigan State to come out and put up a number like a lot of these other teams are doing against FCS opponents this year. Youngstown was under 500 last year. I didn't necessarily think it was one of their better teams, but they played well today. Michigan State unable to put them away, and it remained a game going into the fourth quarter. Michigan State had starters on the field in the fourth quarter. A couple of them got hurt. Not overall a clean, productive day for Michigan State. They're 3-0, 41-24. Like Jonathan Smith says, they'll take it 3-0, but need to be a lot better when they start playing the Big Ten games next week with USC. Your thoughts about Michigan State today?
Well, I thought Youngstown State was not bad.
Not bad.
You look at some of these FCS opponents, they've done the same thing to FCS opponents that they've played thus far that maybe some of the other teams have done. I mean, they've won very handedly. Like they had some size and they had a little bit of toughness on the offensive line, and they had some pretty good interior. They had good size on the interior line, and I think they had a pretty good plan for Michigan State's run game. Those safeties came down hard, but I expected to. Like you, I expected more from Michigan State, and I don't want to say that they weren't ready for that, but that drive that Youngstown State had initially when they came out and they went down, I don't know how many plays it was, 12 plays, 13 plays, and they kicked that initial field goal. I think that was a tone setter for them, and I felt like in a lot of ways Michigan State, at least defensively, was on its heels for a lot of that game. I wonder, too, if they gave the running threat of the quarterback a little bit too much credit at times, but schematically, I think Youngstown State did a really nice job, and there really wasn't much of a pass rush from Michigan State's defense, and that hurt Michigan State, and will continue to hurt Michigan State moving forward.
Yeah, Aiden Childs had a good game, 22 out of 29. He was something like 8 out of his first 9. If he hadn't been as sharp as he was, this game could have gotten really anxiety-induced. Michigan State's Jimmies and Joes, a couple of them were making the difference. Nick Marsh in the first half, 94 yards receiving, 6 catches. I think 62 yards were yards after the catch, a lot of yards after the contact, where they would leave him man-to-man. Michigan State thrown to the wide side of the field. He'd make a guy miss, elude a tackle, and he was the talented 7th grader out there in recess with a bunch of 4th graders. And Childs making some passes. Amari Kelly with the punt return. Other than that, a lot of this stuff was even. Michigan State couldn't run the ball real well, neither could Youngstown. And but those particular Jimmies and Joes, Jack Velling came up with his best game as a Spartan. Michigan State needed that. Rodney Bullard with a big 3rd down catch on the 2-minute drill pass at the end of the first half, getting them a field goal, getting them a 17-10 lead at halftime, I think it was. But Michigan State's inability to run the ball surprised the heck out of me. You have Mekhi Frazier, 1.8 yards per carry. Brandon Tullis, 4.4 yards per carry. These are guys that have been averaging about 7 yards a carry the first 2 games. And I expected them against weaker opposition to come out here tonight and put a hole in them on the ground. And like you said, the safeties were creeping up there a little bit, but not a pre-snap. I've got to go back and watch it again. I'm not going to write this off till they were loading the box like people always say. Wasn't the case. It was the opposite. They had 2 safeties deep, and a lot of times they had a linebacker deep middle like Tampa too. Like, how are you not running the ball against this? Off coverage. It's like they were playing the pass a lot of times, and State still couldn't run the ball. And that surprised me. The running game's been good to this point in the season, so I don't think that's a long-term huge problem. I think they'll have a respectable run game in most Big Ten games. I'm not saying they would run the ball against, I don't know if they'll run the ball against Penn State and so forth. But I didn't expect that to be a shortcoming today, the way it was. Now the injuries. Nick Marsh, all of a sudden he's on the sideline, end of the second quarter. Somebody said he had a little wrap on his ankle or something like that, and did not come back out in the second half. I don't know if he was sighted. Fans sometimes can see the sidelines better than we can. Anyway, they held him out. Jonathan Smith said, looked at him at second half, wasn't ready to go. So, we'll know more on Monday. I don't know what that means. If you don't have Nick Marsh going out to USC, you don't have Mekhi Frazier. Frazier's ankle or his lower body injury looked serious when they brought him off the field. After the game, it sounded like maybe it wasn't quite as serious as maybe some people might have feared, because Jonathan Smith said doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term thing with him. But then he said, but Luka Vinčić could be more serious, and then he stopped himself, didn't want to speculate anymore. But at any rate, we've watched a lot of football, and usually when a guy goes down with something like that, you don't usually see him the next week. They always say, we don't want to speculate. Well, I'll go ahead and speculate a little bit. Point is, they're playing USC next week. Frazier, not sure what they're going to get out of him, if anything. Marsh, no idea. So as Michigan State's 3-0 getting ready for a huge road trip to USC, which is a great opportunity, not sure that engine is going to be firing on all cylinders, Paul.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the run game because you said it wasn't good, and I agree with you. But Michigan State found other ways to run the ball and do so effectively. State did have 4 rushing touchdowns in this game, ended up with 175 rushing.
Good number.
So, I mean, and a lot of that has to do with Aiden Childs and what he was able to do with his legs in this game. But I do think, like those safeties were playing deep. They did come down. But I thought
that's what Smith said. He said they were coming down quick. So they didn't, like a pre-snap they were deep, but, they were coming down quick. So I'll have to take a look at that to see it. And they were fitting correctly and coming down quick. But go ahead.
I think on the other side, Michigan State didn't fit always very well when they were,
on defense?
Yeah, on defense. But, I mean, 175, it's not a terrible day rushing, especially when you have 4 rushing touchdowns. But it kind of reminded me of the rushing game that Boston College had against Fordham. When I was on the VCAST saying, I'm not sure about Boston College run game because they only average X amount of yards per carry. Now, Michigan State averaged, I think, 4.5 yards a carry against Youngstown State. But a lot of that had to do with, like, Bullard had the one run early for a touchdown. Aiden Childs was very effective with his legs, scrambling for real estate.
And sadly, they had to have that.
Yeah.
They needed the quarterback run game.
But you know what? And then there was times where, like Frazier did, as much as he struggled, he did have a rushing touchdown. Tullis did have a rushing touchdown. So I feel like when they got in the red zone, Michigan State was at times effective running the football. They were effective enough running the football where they could set some other stuff up, and that to me is still what I think is the most important. Do you have to honor the run? And that's something that I think teams will have to do against Michigan State.
Yeah, they showed Childs after the opening drive or two. They started changing things up with Childs dropping that linebacker deep and having that cover 4. Sometimes it was cover 2, but it was 4 deep. And I think they changed it up on him. They spied him a little bit more, passing situations, rushing 3 and having a spy on him, trying to take away the run game. So Childs had some things he had to sort through, but never made a big mistake. 22 out of 29, was accurate in the first half when they gave him off coverage to the field. He's got that strong arm to get it out there to him, shoot it out there, and then Marsh was making people miss. That third down pass to Bullard was nice, finding tight ends, Velling, Masunas in key areas, making more reads than maybe last year, showing growth there. The one interception is deflected, linebacker blitz up the middle. I think it was Tullis that missed a pass protection again at the running back position, and that led to. I just got a quick look at that. If I'm wrong about that, I'll correct it over at Spartan Mag. But Michigan State, that interception not necessarily on Childs, and you didn't really see like some of those. For 29 pass attempts, I don't remember any wildly inaccurate passes from Childs. And that might be the first start he's ever had where I can say that, like, every throw, the mechanics or whatever it was seemed to be on point to the point where he was placing some good balls out there. Am I wrong?
I think there was one, but I think that might have been, I don't know if it was, I think it might have been him and his receiver or his tight end. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it might have been the wrong route. Childs was expecting him to cut in, and he ended up cutting out, or
he took it down. He took it deeper to the seam, so not necessarily inaccurate, but just a miscommunication.
Right. I mean, so I don't count that. Just like I don't count the batted pass. But I thought not only was he accurate, he was very he put his receivers in a pretty good place to make yards after the catch. You look at him. There's a lot of yak yards out there, and it wasn't just Nick Marsh. Omari Kelly I think he had 4 receptions for like 69 or whatever, and 29 of those were yards after catch. So you don't do that unless there's some accuracy on the ball. And, so whereas Michigan State wasn't getting maybe a lot of production on the ground, at least initially, even though the numbers looked decent at the end of the game, I do feel like they were able to manufacture some stuff in those like short to intermediate range, and that's something you're going to have to do. And in Big Ten play, they're going to have to be able to hit tight ends. They're going to have to be able to hit running backs out of the backfield. And I thought Childs did a nice job, but I think one of the reasons he did such a good job is he had complete faith in his pass protection in this game. There wasn't one instance where I felt like pass protection broke down. But the one thing I did like, even on that Masunas pass where he made, where Velling was double covered, he went off of Velling and he hit Masunas, but he stepped up just slightly in the pocket. And just seen a little bit better pocket awareness from Aiden Childs, that's really encouraging to me because I think, he can get, with his athleticism, he can get a lot of mileage out of that. Maybe not always doing it spectacular, but doing something simple, which seems simple, but that's kind of what experienced quarterbacks do, step up just a little bit and make an accurate throw. And it was nice to see that from him because I do think that's the kind of thing that has legs and can carry over into subsequent weeks.
Yeah, and they, I think, brought a 4-man rush and dropped somebody, so it was like a zone pressure type of situation. And he had a little bit of pressure at the very end of that because it was a longer read and still stepped up. Masunas ran an out and up on that. So a tight end kind of running a double route, and the timing of that is for Childs for it to come open later. And Childs went to it, found it, delivered a good ball. There was one, I think, the field goal drive when he had Omari Kelly coming open on like a scramble rules, late breaking, opening into the end zone. He overthrew him a little bit. I guess that was one inaccurate pass somewhat, but that was on the broken play a little bit. And that's where Childs, earlier in the season, a couple of games where he missed people on some of those broken plays, scramble on the run. When he's on the run, that's when his accuracy kind of gets a little bit scattershot high sometimes, and it was on that play. Otherwise, he'd have another touchdown
right.
to his credit. But he continues to get a little bit better in all ways, in every way, as he gets more experience and so forth. If I'm Michigan State and I'm coming into this game, or I'm a Michigan State fan, just a Michigan State observer, what you wanted to do today is come out and establish the run. Michigan State, like you said, ran for 174 yards. A lot of those were quarterbacks. I look at tailback runs, like you did with the Boston College. Tullis 4.4, Frazier 1.8. I would think if you're Michigan State, you want to corral that quarterback, shut them down. But they were sleight of hand, and they were dealing some cards and moving the chains. And their offensive coordinator, former offensive coordinator at Penn State for a couple of years. Offensive coordinator at Penn State. James Franklin fired him after the Michigan game 2 years ago. Prior to that, he was coordinator for Oklahoma State when they really had it rolling. And he was a spread guy, and he tore up Narduzzi one day. And Yurcich will be back up in Power 4 real soon. And they do some crafty things with not the greatest material. But if you're Michigan State, you want to come out and put a hole in them with the ground game. All the good things you've done in the ground game the first two games, it should have been times 2 today, then play action. And just in a perfect world, be up 28-0 at halftime. And then you put Milivojevic in, and then Frazier's not playing in the second half. Then Jordan Hall can sit out the whole second half. That's the idea. That was the perfect script. And Youngstown didn't cooperate today. They came out, they played hard, and they moved the change, and they did some good things. The Jimmies and Joes were different. Plays like, Velling, flashing. Also where Jimmies and Joes really showed themselves were like on the punt return. Youngstown State, as solid and crafty and well coached as they were today, they didn't tackle real well. Like in space, they couldn't get Nick Marsh down. They couldn't get the punt returner down. Some of those areas is where you could see that if you went out and played tackle football illegally in recess in 5th grade, one team got to make 85 picks before the other team got their first pick. You saw that a little bit in tackling, and that's part of why Michigan State won the game today and didn't get a blowout.
Yeah, I feel like too. When you're a punter, a lot of it's trajectory.
Yeah, he outpunted his coverage, eh?
Yeah, so I feel like he comes in and he's like going to try to match Ryan Eckley. His coach, was about as flattering about a punter as you could be coming up here, saying that the best player on Michigan State's team is Eckley. He didn't come out and say that, but he kind of insinuated that. And I think when you hear that, and you're a specialist, and he kicked low a few times, and you do not want to give Omari Kelly the ball low on a ball that comes right to him. I don't think you want to give Omari Kelly the ball at all. And the trajectory on that was wild. That could have been a really bad play because Omari Kelly did not catch that ball very cleanly. He caught that with not great fundamentals. He even admitted such afterwards.
Really?
Where it was kind of caught behind him. And he ended up making a great play. I feel bad for Omari Kelly that he didn't punch that in because I think this might be either the first or second longest punt return in Spartan Stadium that didn't result in a touchdown. So that's something that it would have been nice to see him do it. But right after that, one play after that, Brandon Tullis punches it in there. That's the weird thing about this run game. They didn't do very well on some of those first and second down runs, but in the red zone, they were very effective running the football. So there's a lot to clean up in this game.
And outpunted his coverage, 54 yards, and he caught it, and he had a good beat and a half before you saw a visiting jersey
Absolutely.
in the screen. So not only was it a great punt, outpunted his coverage, but also the punt coverage athletes.
Yeah, for sure.
Not the best.
No
I
doubt.
went back and looked at it to look to see who threw a real clean block for Michigan State. I didn't really see one. Avion Gross, I think, was on the field and kind of had a chance and almost blocked a guy and smartly eased up because the guy turned his back. It might have been an illegal block, so he smartly avoided that when, Darius Snow was out there. But I don't think anyone really threw a great block. It was just a guy at recess with a better Jimmy and Joe, and the tackling wasn't there. And that turned the game because the score was it 14-10 at that time? I can't remember what it was, but it was a game-changing. It was maybe 7-3. And then they do that, and then they go down and make it 14-3 when they punch it in. You make a great point about Michigan State's run game in the red zone, getting near the goal line, which are supposed to be the toughest yards to pick up yards on the ground, and they smelled the end zone and cashed those in. One play to score after that punt return, toss sweep, short side, got some good blocking, sealed the edge, walked in. So you're right, around the goal line, red zone, run game was
But
there.
they were doing, I don't know, how many of those run plays that scored where had three tight ends out there.
Yeah.
But that's something I don't think Youngstown State as a defense is really used to, having multiple tight ends out there. And I think moving forward, we talk about Omari Kelly and the impact he made on special teams in this game, but we've seen him in the first game against Western Michigan. He had 9 catches or whatever he had in that game, and he proved that he can be the workhorse for Michigan State. He may need to be, depending on what's going on with Nick Marsh. And then you're going to also need to get more production from Krishan McCray. I felt like Michigan State. I thought there was one play where I think Childs missed him, where he went with a primary read, could have got Krishan McCray, but that's a guy that I think's got some explosive ability. Bullard's a guy. I'm not so sure about. I think Ethan Boyd is. Evan Boyd, I'm sorry. The PA guy said Ethan Boyd today. I promised myself I wouldn't, and then,
You broke your promise to yourself.
I just did. Yeah, well,
Sorry.
not the first time, John.
It's okay.
And but I do think he's got some more to give. But I think Michigan State's got some guys at receiver. I don't think they're going to get caught as shorthanded as they were last year. When they went out to. When they faced Boston College, when it was just Montori Foster and no Nick Marsh.
Now, I miss Montori Foster. Good kid. I hope he's doing well.
No, and he should have had a lot. I mean, through no fault of his own, he should have had a lot of more touchdowns than he did last year. Should have put up much more numbers than he did last year. And a lot of that was, on Aiden Childs being a first-year quarterback and no run game.
Nice to see Michigan State get Rodney Buller involved. Talented guy. Went to him in the red zone with that 8-yard, kind of that end-around play. And Vincic got out there, had a good block. And Vincic is now injured. We'll see what happens with him. But it didn't look good for him. Christian Phillips came in, played some right guard. Brocious played some left guard. But now with Vincic out, Michigan State will have to approach it like they did week 1 with just the 3 guards. I don't know what was going on with Stanton Ramil at left tackle. That, Jonathan Smith addressed some of the injuries after the game. Did not mention whether that was an injury or not. I assume it was. We didn't see him in the second half. So Rustin Young played left tackle. Ashton Lepo was not available.
Connor Moore was down briefly. I don't know if he came back in.
Yeah, right tackle, Michigan State had a 3-person rotation for the first couple of games, and it was not always smooth. But if you have Lepo out, and I don't know what's going on with Ramil, that edge protection situation can start springing leaks really early, or real easily also against a talent uptick. I know that Lincoln Riley and USC does not have the greatest reputation defensively, but they've been working on getting that solved, and I guarantee there's going to be some athletes there on the edge for them.
Yeah, I'm sure that. And, Stanton Ramil was standing out there the entire game, so it's not like he went back to the locker room and we never saw from him again. And it didn't look like there was, I don't know, I did not see him on crutches or in a walking boot or anything like that. So we'll see what happens with him. I would be surprised if he didn't play that game, to be honest with you.
All right, one play I want to mention. First of all, give us a thumbs up. Give us a like here on the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Go to SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. And we'd love to see you over there. $1 for a week. You can check out SpartanMag.com if you like this stuff. You'd love our coverage and the conversation at the Spartan Mag Underground Bunker message board. Go become a subscriber. Become a Spartan Magger. You will love it. And Paul, I don't have my script for shoe pan recycling. Think we can say it? Think I should have it memorized by now?
Well, not memorized, but you can get the high points.
Shoe pan recycling. Take them back. They're your roads, your beaches, and it's your dime. Take them back. It's hurting the environment, Paul. Yeah. Over the last year, in recent years, Michigan State's recycling rate has dropped dramatically. I think Michiganders are squandering $105 million American dollars by not taking them back. So take them back. That's a message from Shoe Pan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. Now, they've not been... let's see. It hurts the environment, Paul. If you don't take them back, it hurt. They're your roads, your beaches. What else are they?
You mentioned the roads and beaches.
Roads and beaches, people. Your lakes. So keep those things clean, and it's your dime. Take them back. It's worth it, and we'll all benefit. Spartan Mag is happy for the sponsorship from Shoe Pan. So take them back, everybody. Now, one play on the opening drive. The thing about Michigan State, they only punted one time today. Turned it over on downs once, had an interception once. Field goal, a couple of field goals. First drive, Youngstown State gets that opening drive. They get a field goal, chew up half the quarter. Michigan State comes in. It's 4th and 8 at the 37-yard line. And everybody's covered. They go one deep. It's man-to-man. And he catches him in a scramble. And Aiden Childs moves it again with his feet with like a 10-yard scramble to get the first down. Then counter boot to Marsh for 10 yards. And earlier they had a curl to Marsh, missed tackle, 28 yards. 3rd and goal, zone read. Lost 2 on that one, actually. But the 3rd and long, actually 4th and long, Nick Childs with his feet again. Nick Childs' feet was the reason they beat Boston College, having to rely on his feet here. Then in the 4th quarter, Michigan State was up by like 14 or whatever it was. It was like the drive that kind of put the game away. There was a 3rd down play. Michigan State ran a designed keeper for Childs, then another designed keeper, then a quarterback draw. With 8 minutes to go, if you'd have came into this game and you told me that Michigan State was going to run 3 quarterback design keepers for Childs with 8 minutes to go against Youngstown State, I would say operation unsuccessful if you get into that situation. That was a situation, to Childs' credit, he moved the chains and got it done, but overall, I don't know if operation is the right word. Mission unsuccessful,
well,
I would say.
It certainly didn't go according to the script, but I don't think necessarily that it's a bad thing that Childs is getting his feet wet running, because I do feel like that's an area of his game that he can really influence a lot of things. And I don't think him coming into the season with some of the runs. Well, I don't like some of what he does on like option runs or whatever, like some of the decision making. But you can't really get good at running the football unless you do it. So.
That's a good point. We're not seeing zone read, like mesh read option from him.
Right. I don't think that's a strength of his.
Maybe he doesn't have a feel for that because he's never really shown a feel for that.
But I do think that I do think when you wear the red jersey in practice and no one's hitting you, you're not doing a lot of these you're not doing a lot of keepers. You're not doing a lot of like scrambles. I think he's getting a better feel for what he can and can't do in the pocket. He's getting a better feel for eluding defenses, feeling that pressure. And so I do think there's room for growth in that aspect of his game. So I don't think it's something that you want to see. You certainly don't want him trying to hurdle a guy, which he did. Which he explained that he tried to hurdle the guy because he saw on film that the guy tackled low all the time. But in that instance, he didn't tackle low, and that might have just been Aiden Childs just saying that, because that sounds better than having your star quarterback try to hurdle a dude standing straight up. But I do think that part of his game is really kind of. If you looked at where he was in the opener in terms of feeling his way around running the football and where he is now, I think he's shown a lot of growth in 3 weeks, and they're going to need that, honestly, from him in Big Ten play in some of these games. That's something they didn't always have from him in terms of they got a good scramble here and there last year, but I don't think he had a really good feel for what he could do and couldn't do. I think that experience helps running the football, and that scramble stuff is going to matter in some of these close games in Big Ten play, and there will be close games.
It'll be interesting to see what opponents do to play defense against the run threat with Aiden Childs. Today we saw Youngstown State operate a little bit differently than anyone has against Childs. With that spy. People have done that on 3rd down here and there, but they were doing it on 1st and 10. Rushing 3 and spying with 1, and kind of taking away some of the deeper middle stuff. And Childs was having to look to the checkdowns a little bit more, the shorter passes. Youngstown was willing to do that, and they rallied and they tackled in those situations. The low point for Michigan State might have been first drive of the second half. They get the ball first, they go 3 and out. 2 run plays go nowhere. Then third down, checks down out to the flat, loss of 6. Check down because they had a lot of bodies back there. They had a lot of traffic back there in coverage, which, like I'm saying, it was really curious and impressive that they were able to go 2 deep, sometimes 3 deep with like a Tampa 2 guy back there, and you still couldn't run the ball against it. That's why Michigan State set out to run the ball for many reasons to begin the second half, and it still wasn't there. I got to go back and look at it to see why they weren't able to run the ball in some of those. As far as Michigan State with problems, a few minutes ago we looked at the long run that Youngstown State had, that 66-yard run by the running back. On that one, Michigan State going to second string on defense. And this is something we talked about before turning it on, before starting the VCast here. Coming into the season, preseason camp, when we were covering Michigan State, talking to players, talking to coaches, there were a lot of indications that Michigan State's second string was really coming along. And you do see that in some positions like corner and defensive tackle, where second string has come along real nicely. We heard good things about Marcellius Pulliam, Brady Pretzlaff. Pulliam last year I thought was a guy that played with some pop in mop-up duty. I thought when he hit people it really registered. I wasn't sure about the quickness and speed. We heard in the spring that he had improved in those areas, and we heard that in preseason camp. Today on that long run, Jordan Hall was out. Now Jordan Hall's been playing through some aches and pains early in the season. You would love to be able to take him out and put Pretzlaff in or Pulliam in, but we haven't seen a lot of Pulliam, and today we kind of saw why. On that long run, he's on the field, trying to play some second stringers for some experience, but also to give a rest to Jordan Hall and some of those players. And Michigan State came with a blitz from the field. Youngstown State had 3 receivers over to the field and the tight end over there, so it's unbalanced with 4 receivers over to the field. Michigan State goes corners over, which they hadn't done. I try to remember everything, but I'm not as good at that as I used to be. The brain's not as good as it used to be. But I don't remember them going corners over all season. It's when usually if you have one corner over there and one over here, even if there's no wide receivers, then he kind of zones it up. Earlier in the year, if they emptied it out, then the corner was coming on a blitz automatic if the receiver is vacated. But Michigan State brought corners over, which is usually something you do when the other team has a really good passing attack, and you want to make sure that you've got a real good corner on a particular receiver no matter where he goes. Michigan State, Youngstown did not present those type of problems in their passing attack. So I was a little surprised that Michigan State's corners over. And then if you are doing corners over, it's just naturally not going to be something that you rep a lot in practice as much as your base. Now it's something you need to be good for different checkpoints of the season. Corners over, all right, that's the first thing. So you're playing a defense you don't normally play. Secondly, Pulliam's on the field. So your middle linebacker's a guy that doesn't normally play. Michigan State comes with a blitz from the field. It's the nickelback Ade Willie and Pulliam. Pretty sure, Paul, that they didn't want both of those guys blitzing. When you look at it, it's just oblong. And Jonathan Smith said after the game, I'm not even sure that we lined up properly on that play. That's really, he's definitely sure that they didn't want to line up properly. So they didn't line up properly, and I think Pulliam should have been like in the interior gaps. Instead, he's on the edge. Not only is he on the edge, I think, and they can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but not only is he wrong, but then he's way wrong because he blitzes. So you end up with Willie and Pulliam and Dunnigan in the same D gap. When you have 3 players in the same gap, I've said over the years that if you have 2 in the same gap, it's like having 10 on the field instead of 11. When you have 3 in the same gap, it's like playing defense with 9. So if you're watching the game in the stadium or at home, they hand it off, and you're like, how is this guy wide open and running all by himself? It's because the alignment was different, and they carried it out differently, wrongly, and it gets out, and they block Wayne Matthews, and there's nobody left over there except Denson. Denson is second-string safety. He misses a tackle at the 40, and it's down the sideline. Here's my point. That's sloppy. That's an error. Is it communication on the field, communication from the sideline? Hard to say, but it's second stringers. It's not Jordan Hall and Malik Spencer out there making the mistakes. It's still costly in this particular game, but I would call that an isolated incident. The second string is not as good as I kind of thought it might be coming into the season. Still need work there, and that's going to be something they'll get a kick in the pants in the film room. But I don't think it's reflective of the defense like your first defense, Hall, Spencer, and Kai Martinez out there again today. It's not like they did it against those guys. if that's any consolation. And I think it is a consolation.
Yeah, and I think, too, you'll also see Nakai Martinez, who Smith said after the game was on a pitch count. You'll see him play more snaps than he played today. So maybe you're not going to have a situation where you have Denson out there as many. And I'm guessing that Malik Spencer was also on a pitch count coming off last week in that injury. I thought he was fine when he was out there. I just feel like there was a couple times where when Michigan State did get in trouble, going back to the second stringers, it would be nice if you could play one second stringer with a vet sometimes, but there's a couple times in the back end where you saw 2 second stringers out there together, and I think that's where Michigan State got in trouble a little bit. I'm with you. Watching that play over, we've seen Ade Willie blitz, and he's been pretty good at it.
Yeah.
He's been effective. He ranked second on the team in tackles for loss coming into this game. They really like him. What he does is supporting the run defense. So I'm guessing that, knowing Joe Rossi, that if you're sending one guy there, you don't want 2 guys going to the same spot. That's just not good football, and it doesn't add up to good chess. And Joe Rossi plays chess, not checkers. I don't know what that game that was. That was definitely it was like second tier checkers.
And you don't want to be blowing timeouts, because you blew 2 timeouts in the first half, as it was. One time, Nick Marsh wasn't sure if he's supposed to be the guy up on the line of scrimmage or not, to be the 7th guy. So Michigan State play clock's going down, the call timeout. Later, Michigan State's doing a substitution. They get caught, not quite sure to call timeout. They blow those 2 timeouts, and then at the end of the first half, 2-minute drill, they needed those timeouts. Yeah. So that
more
play,
like a 1-minute drill. They got it back with 1:05. I think that as many people say, like, well, it would have been nice to punch it in there. Like one of the things that Aiden Child said is they were holding Jack Velling on that. He was being held on the ground after he made that catch.
So they couldn't spike it quickly?
So they couldn't spike it quick enough. Aiden Child's like, you guys, you didn't see it, but they were holding him down there. But the bottom line is they got points out of that, and they needed to get points out of it because they didn't do well coming out of the halftime. But if they had scored on that first drive of the second half, it would have been a moot point. But that's what's going on there, and them getting a field goal. I do think also in a situation like that, Martin Konyndyk, we saw him have 2 good field goals last weekend. It's good for him to get kicks in games under pressure. So, you want to see more points on the board, but just them getting points there and having to get another field goal up, I think that's good for him coming into Big Ten play. But so if you're wondering about that, Jack, according to Aiden Childs, Jack Velling was being held down on that play.
And on that 66-yard run, getting back to my original point, if you're on the sideline and you see Pulliam wrong, not lined up as an interior linebacker like he's supposed to, call timeout. Yeah. How many times did we see D'Antonio just all of a sudden, let's call timeout?
Let's look what you do with the offensive coach, right? I mean, same thing with D'Antonio. You go on the flip side with D'Antonio, and then you saw a lot of timeouts on, 3rd and long in certain situations or whatever at the end of the game. But some of those timeouts probably should have gone for the offense and didn't. Same type of thing when I think with the offensive coaching staff. They'd probably rather not have those go for the defense,
exactly
in my opinion.
Exactly
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that wherever your bread is buttered, you're going to be inclined to want to save those timeouts for those issues.
90% of the time, if you saw D'Antonio all of a sudden call timeout just a couple seconds before the ball snapped, it's usually because of defense. He saw something on defense. This case, someday when Rossi's a head coach, you could call timeout on that one. Point was, that was the first half. And later on, like I said, they blew 2 other timeouts, so that would have been 3 blown timeouts. But they're trying to play a deeper bench, but you can see that some of those second stringers not quite there. Denson, heard some good things about him spring and preseason. He's not quite there either. Maybe in the future. He plays big. He's a big guy, but missed that tackle in open field, needed it to try to get that thing on the ground after some other teammates kind of messed up a little bit, but it kind of amplified. So a lot of things to work on there. Childs, again, credit to him. On that hurdle play, I go back to, man, it's just too bad you're running a quarterback draw with 7 minutes to go.
I agree.
And he's a playful, competitive guy. He's out there doing his best, and he certainly continues to take it up a notch every little bit, every single week. So, did we forget anything? Anything else we want to cover? There was the touchdown they scored at the end of the game on that tunnel screen or tear screen, whatever you want to call it. Michigan State was up by 17 and 3 minutes to go, and they've got Anthony Pinnace out there, and Burt for the first time was playing corner on the other side, and there should have been a little more heavier pursuit coming inside out. I think Pulliam might have been on the field for that one as well. I'm not exactly sure, but that one should have gotten on the ground. But again, it's not starters. Also, there was the long pass play to the running back, and Pulliam was on the field for that one too. I don't mean to pile it on. We're just talking about, what went wrong, because Michigan State fans want to know. And I always say, if I'm criticizing some of these players out here, I will say right now that Marcellus Pulliam is better at football than I will ever be at anything.
I hope
These
so.
guys are 99% athletes. These are scholarship athletes at Power 4 level. They're good, but they're still learning. And on the play where they're running back, what do you mean you hope so? Because I'm not very good at anything.
Every day, man. I mean,
yeah. So Jaden
yeah,
Gilbert.
I do hope so. That'd be pretty. Some head should roll in the personnel department if you're getting a scholarship here.
Yeah, no way would that happen. So proper respect to Marcellus Pulliam. He's out here working all year and comes out here and puts a helmet on and can play football at this level. Good for him. But on the play where Jaden Gilbert got loose for a 39-yard reception, that was the wide open running back out of the backfield down the middle of the field. Pulliam also was on the field for that. Looked like a man-to-man matchup situation. Maybe the other linebacker on the other side, Matthews, but I doubt it. Maybe he should have matched up with him. It looks like it should have been Pulliam. Goes by him. Pulliam turns him loose. The running back's the number 3 receiver coming out. He's open by 10 yards. They chase him down, inside the 10-yard line. And Pulliam is taken off the field right after that play too, which is another sign. But, and Pretzloff played today. And he lost a guy in a mesh concept on a third down once. I think it was Tomzak, the wide receiver, who's a really good receiver, maybe their best overall, most talented player in terms of having a shot at the next level. It's a little mesh crossing route, and Pretzlaff has the first receiver, and then as it changes, I guess he's supposed to let him go and get on him in an instant, but asking Pretzlaff to go from 0 to 60 on the receiver, hard to do. Got away from him. I'm not sure he erred on that one. It was just kind of good chalk on that particular play for them on that play. But Pretzlaff also got helped off the field. I'm not sure that one was serious structurally, but they need Pretzlaff to come along quickly because Jordan Hall, I'm not sure, can play all 15 rounds in every game every week.
They didn't put Jordan Hall back in. He was out for I can't remember when he went out, but he was on the sideline because when Pretzlaff got helped off the field, Jordan Hall was one of the first guys off the sideline asking him if he's okay. Now Jordan Hall went back to the sideline and didn't go in the rest of the game, so they were kind of
So they put Pulliam in after when they were both out.
I believe so, and that so I mean there was this steadfast commitment for them to keep Jordan Hall on the sideline and keep him resting. So it was kind of a deal where they were going to sink or swim with what they had out there. They didn't want to risk Jordan Hall, and I don't blame him because he's they absolutely need him coming up for a Big Ten play, and they need him to be a healthy playmaker. They don't want to run the tread off those tires.
And if Pulliam, go ahead.
Go.
If Pulliam, continues to make mistakes like this, I mean, you look at. I wonder what's going to happen in the film room and in the war room when they discuss what to do going forward. You can stick with him as the number 2 linebacker, Pretzlaff. You continue to bring him along as much as you can, or do you start moving Darius Snow over there for a little bit of that? I don't know. Joe Rossi's the linebackers coach and the coordinator. Those are things that'll be confidential. We'll never know. But I wonder, what happens. Down the road when Jordan Hall invariably needs to come out for a breather. It'll be Pretzlaff first, but after that, I wonder about the bullpen.
Well, I think it comes down to how much football you've played, because you look at even a guy like Wayne Matthews, like the third, like last year he wasn't starting. You look at Jordan Hall, as good a linebacker as he was, it's a process, and this is not an easy defense to play. So a lot of it comes down to experience. Like Pretzlaff is a great linebacker for the future, I think. You're going to benefit from every game rep you get, but, you look at, like, Snow, for as many injuries as he's had a ton of reps, and he's a smart dude. So a lot of it comes down to recognition. And you talk about playing fast. Someone playing fast isn't like what you can do physically; it's what you can do mentally, and that translates to, how quickly you can do something mentally. Then allows you to go and make a play. And you see guys like Jordan Hall and Wayne Matthews. They're flying around because they can identify it quickly. They trust what they've got going on, and they make a play. And sometimes they're not always right. Like Jordan Hall was saying, like on one of the big plays where Nikai Martinez made a stop, where he was completely wrong, but Nikai Martinez made him look right. So some of it's that, and having veteran safeties out there hopefully like Nikai Martinez is going to play more plays. Hopefully Malik Spencer is going to play more plays. That's going to help out those linebackers. And it's also going to give those guys confidence when a young guy comes in to have two veteran safeties behind him, knowing you've got that wall of experience playing behind you. And but Paulie was going to benefit from this, but this was not an easy scheme to play, as you were talking about. And props to Youngstown State for doing some good scheming. I thought Boston College had a great scheme as well. And Michigan State's going to see more good coaching moving forward because there are a lot of really good offensive coaches in the Big Ten.
And Darius Snow, I'm not saying he should be playing more. These coaches know more about it than I do, of course. And if Snow did play more, there'd probably be a pitch count there because he's had some physical limitations. He's fought through them for a number of years. Good for him. But I don't know if Michigan State, they'll go back and they'll teach these guys a little bit more. But at some point, you go away from people. I'm not saying they're at that point with these guys yet. Elijah Toliver got on the field at the end of the game. At that point, I thought Youngstown State was kind of tapping out a little bit. His touchdown run, good for him, 22-yarder. I'm not sure that particular defense that he went against at the end of the year had as much starch as the defense that Youngstown State had earlier in the game. But Toliver, confidence builder for him, got the touchdown late. He was the guy that was carrying the ball at the end of the game. Frazier was hurt, went away from Tullis, and I suspect Toliver is going to get more early carries in the game next week than he has it to this point in the season. I'm not sure what's there if and when that happens, but that's a development also.
He also had last week he had what should have probably been a touchdown run, but it was called back for a penalty. So
Holding, yeah.
I think he
looks pretty good on that touchdown too. He looks pretty quick on that one.
As he gets comfortable, this is I think a recognition, a knowledge type thing. I think having talked to him in the past, I think he's a guy that's not always super self-confident. As he gets experience in the scheme, we're going to see less of those happy feet type of things, and you're going to see him be more decisive. And this run at the end of the game, yeah, I agree with you. Maybe Youngstown State was tired. It was well blocked up, and I saw an efficient run from him. Yeah. Same thing with last weekend where they had that touchdown that was called back. That was an efficient run. So maybe that's a sign of things to come. Still don't know about him in pass pro because that's supposedly one of his weaknesses. He's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. But I think, even today, Brandon Tullis he had a nice catch where, downfield for 10 or 15 yards. I think Tullis is a good running back. And I think Toliver, I think he's got some potential. I think as he gets experience and confidence, he can do some things. But we'll have to see moving forward. Those last two runs that we've seen him, the small sample size they have been. It looked better to me than what we saw in his first taster game reps against Western Michigan.
Yeah, and this week I suspect that in the running back meeting room and the team offensive meeting room and so forth, it's going to be like, okay, Tullis, you got more this week. And Toliver, you got more. He's not going in number 3 running back, not sure what he's going to get. You're getting more. And what that does to his mindset now that he's had a little taste of 3 games at this level, now he's getting ready for a Big Ten game. I'm not sure what it'll look like, but from attitudinal, psychological approach, it'll be new for Toliver, and we'll see what it looks like. But that's college football, changing nature every week.
I thought last year, the Boston College game, that was kind of a turning point for K'Ron Lynch-Adams. Nate Carter struggled in that Boston College game, had 9 carries for 9 yards. And then I think K'Ron Lynch-Adams, who started out the season as the number 2 back, he had a little bit of success in there and got fed a little bit more. And I think he took advantage of that. That's one thing about a veteran running back. When they know it's their time, you're gonna see their best effort. Now, hopefully that doesn't turn into him trying to do too much and ends up fumbling the ball. But I would say that he probably will be feeling good about himself getting a touchdown, and he's going to see an opportunity there. On the flip side, it's also going to motivate Brandon Tullis moving forward because this is also an opportunity for him to prove that he can be a feature back, and he has done some really good things this year. He's been a touchdown vulture, but can he be a guy that carries more than 7 or 8 times a game?
So only 3 games into the season, all of a sudden there's a rash of injuries on the offensive line. Injury at running back, injury at wide receiver. Alante Brown injured during pregame warm-ups today. Didn't see him on kickoff return. For Michigan State to be a good team, you need all those bullets firing. You need all those positives in your holster. And everybody has injuries and dings and so forth. And it's hitting Michigan State again, as it does everybody, but you can't really pick which injuries you want. But they're having to deal with it. Last year it was offensive line and defensive backfield. For now, defensive backfield looks pretty solvent with Nikai Martinez coming back. Need Jordan Hall healthy and everything else. But Michigan State, they're 3-0, Paul, and they've got a lot of teaching to do. I think in some ways took a little step backward today. Jordan Hall said that he felt they came out a little bit flat today. And there was a time during this game, and I never usually accept that as something. As an explanation for anything. A lot of times I've always said that's athletes not wanting to admit that the other team's playing pretty good, so you blame yourself, which I understand. But there was a time in this game it was 14-10, and that Youngstown State sideline, they were all grouped together looking out on the field, and they were energized and excited. Michigan State, which is kind of, they're lacking a little something. They came back and won, but in that regard, there was some flatness.
Yeah, and the crowd wasn't near as good as it's been in these other
Crowd
games.
was flat,
So,
which I kind of expected. They showed up in decent numbers, a little better than I expected.
Yeah, but it wasn't like what it's been. There wasn't like the energy to feed off of. And I'm not saying
And they all left in the third quarter.
right. And
Is 76 degrees too hot now, Paul, or something?
I don't know, but it wasn't. It's human nature. We see, you see this a lot. Michigan State's coming off a big win over a non-conference opponent. Like a Power 4 opponent. And I really think that this game would have been better played for Michigan State if in week 2 or, or something like that. There's no doubt in my mind human nature does play a role in everything, including athletics. And, Youngstown State's feeling good about themselves. They get an opportunity to cycle up. Michigan State, they played down to their opponent today, and that's something that they can't do in the future.
This game was beginning to remind me of the Louisiana Tech loss for John Elsmith years ago when Michigan State was kind of leading by 2 touchdowns the whole game, and it was like 80 degrees, so people were saying it's too hot. Everybody left. Louisiana Tech score, onside kick score, and they win. And John Elsmith was like, "Where'd y'all go? Where'd all the fans go? We needed them."
The difference in this game between that and this is that Michigan State does have a proud defense. They may not have played great today, but they do have some pride on defense. And the other thing is they had a quarterback that's consistently made plays. And I don't recall with that Louisiana Tech game where you had a quarterback that played for 4 quarters and kind of did what they needed to do.
They threw it around pretty good. But what Michigan State did today they didn't do that day was they covered an onside kick. But it was Wayne Matthews. He's on your hands team, Paul? Turned out, okay, I don't know. He was out there. So sometimes with onside kick defense, you have some quote-unquote linemen. I know he's a linebacker, but you have guys that need to absorb some contact. So that's part of some of the onside kick ploys also. But it's not always running backs and wide receivers out there on the quote hands team. So he made the play anyway. So anyway, that wrapped up the game, and we'll wrap this up. Anything else?
Nope.
That's Paul Konyndyk right there. My name is Jim Comparoni. You've been watching the VCast from Spartan Stadium with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.